Welcome, everybody. My name is Paul Doski, and with me I have the lovely fiance,
Tessa Baker.
And also with us is
Stacy Cox.
That's right. So make sure you strap on some shoes and head to the beaches because, well, you're all going to get martyred or something like that.
Oh, goodness.
And we're not just talking about any type of martyrs. We're talking about the original 2008 by Pascal. And then we're going to take a look at the most shittiest remake you could ever think of by putting everything that you could possibly do to kill a movie, dump it into a blender, and then just mix it up by hitting that smash button of a blender. And then when you pour it out, it's just like, what the hell happened and what did I just make? So, anyway, enjoy. Let's get on with it. Alright, so, Stacy, I think this might be appropriate for you and I first, because you said you originally saw Martyrs when it first came out, or somewhere around that general timeline, right?
Yes.
So, when Martyrs first came out for the U.S. in 2009, what was your initial reaction to Martyrs? Because, I'm assuming, like, people like me, maybe you, I'm actually kind of curious. Did you hear about Martyrs through Fangoria, or did you find it from, like, just browsing around, like, your local Walmart or something?
Actually, I think I found it while searching online for disturbing movies to see. I can't remember if it came up in a Google search or if it came up through IMDb. But you know how you search for one movie and then there's the also list of suggested movies that come up, and Martyrs was the one. I can't remember if it was that or if it was like through a Google. Actually, now that I remember, I think it was on one of those lists of top disturbing films or something like that. I think that's how I found out about it.
Okay. Well, just real quick, I actually followed Martyrs through Fangoria back when Fangoria was a decent magazine.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. I'm not trying to say they suck now, but it's definitely different than what they were or are now, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, please, Stacy.
It's missing some elements.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, Stacy. So, what was your initial thought on going into Martyrs?
I would say it was disturbing. Honestly, I cringed while watching some of it. I did, and it's not very often that I cringe on a movie, but that movie I definitely cringed on, and it was hard to watch it all, but I stuck through it anyway. I felt like it was very offensive to me as a woman. It's very offensive to me as a woman to, witness that. So, yeah.
I see what you mean, and I'll just quickly say, before I let Tessa have her input of her first impressions of Martyrs, is when I went into it, I actually, for the first time ever, actually told my mom while watching this, because especially when the beginning started with the shotgun blast, that, wow, can we just talk about effects after, like, right away? Like, wow. Anyway, right from that shotgun blast of the opening scene there, all the way to the end of the movie, you just want to just have your face like glued to the screen, because you just feel like if you blink, you're going to miss something. And I just remember telling my mother to shut up. I'm watching something. And and then I'm like, look, I'm sorry, but I'm like so into this right now that I just don't want to miss a single moment right now of like, just because of how intense and focused I was and glued to the whole movie. But yeah, I apologize to my mother, but I never really had a movie that just grabbed me like that where I told my mom to shut up. Usually I just, hit that pause button, and then if I have to, I'll go back, rewind a little bit. But no, this was the only movie that I did that to my poor mom. But again, I did apologize, so everybody knows. So, Tessa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I do remember, I was the first one to show you this film, and because of the brutality. So, what would your first impression of this grand opening of a brutal movie, I guess, for you?
Well, yes, it is true. I didn't know about the Martyrs until you told me about it. First time I watched it, you kind of was like, oh, there's going to be like a section of this movie, like 10 minutes of it, that I'm just going to skip right past because it's so brutal. I don't know if you can handle it, if it's going to be too much. So the first time that I watched The Martyrs with Paul, I didn't see that 10 minutes of brutality, which he called the beating and the building of the martyr. So the first time that I watched this film, I didn't see that, but I saw everything else.
Which I'm trying to remember why we skipped it to begin with, but
because for some reason you thought that it was too brutal for me.
Yeah, too disturbing, maybe.
Too disturbing for me because it's a woman. It's a
woman
being beaten.
You didn't really watch that much horror until we got together, anyway.
No, I watched horror before we got together. Horror was my predominant genre that I would go to.
Then it wasn't some of the more brutal stuff.
Well, I wouldn't say more gross because I can watch really gross horror, but I guess it was it's like a whole nother level of horror that I wasn't exposed to per se a lot of. So you were just kind of not sure how I was going to respond to it.
Well, kind of like Stacy's, as she said, some of it made her cringe. So, and you have moments like with Last House on the Left, where it makes you cringe and want to hide your eyes, stuff like that.
Well, not so much hide my eyes, but turn away because I really don't like rape scenes a lot. I've kind of
women beating, you don't really like that, so.
I've kind of built up a tolerance over the years for stuff like that when it comes to like horror movies, but I'm not really like a huge, gigantic fan of like rape scenes and stuff like that and things where women are being brutalized. That's stuff that kind of bothers me a little bit normally because I'm a very empathetic person, but I guess developed a tougher skin when it comes to horror movies and stuff and the levels of brutality and what I can handle and what I can't handle and things like that. And after seeing a Serbian film, which we won't get into
until a later episode,
that's a whole nother level of brutality. So, and I said to Paul before I rewatched Martyrs, the original, all the way through, not skipping the 10-minute beating scene, I said, okay, I was like, between a Serbian film and the original Martyrs, which is worse? Would you say a Serbian film is worse than the Martyrs? Or vice versa? And he goes, I would say the Serbian film is worse when it comes to brutality. I said, well, if I can get through a Serbian film, I can get through the Martyrs original. So that was pretty much how we went about it. I was just like, well, he's like, well, maybe watch like the remake first, see what you think of that, and blah blah blah, and then watch the original, and
to really appreciate
the original. I was like, okay, so I'll do it that way. And at first, he's like, well, you could always, skim and scan through the remake because it's really just garbage anyways, and just skip right to the end if you wanted to. I said, no, I'll just sit here and I'll just watch the whole thing, absorb the whole movie in itself. And then I'll watch the original. And I'll absorb that and, go from there. So that's what I did. And I noticed differences between both films right away. Some of them were subtle differences, but I still picked up on them, which I think Paul was kind of impressed in a way that I did.
Right, but so in general, though, how do you feel about the original Martyrs as
How
a
do
whole?
I feel about the original Martyrs as a whole? It's brutal and it leaves a lasting impression. It's like one of those films that you watch and you witness how they build or create a martyr, and you're just like, holy shit, like, because you wouldn't believe the stuff that certain people can take that other people can't handle, that they would break like that. Whereas you like expose somebody who's being built and being turned into a martyr can take like one thing after another and just keep taking it until they finally reach a breaking point. It takes them a lot longer to break, but eventually they do break, and it's supposed to be like this enlightening experience or whatever. So I found it interesting.
Were there also any parts in it that would make you kind of cringe as well, like Stacy?
I personally didn't like when they skinned her, and you could see her muscles and shit. But I also thought that was interesting effects for the movie as well. But as far as brutality goes, I thought that was pretty fucking brutal. Pardon my French.
I don't know if that's supposed to be a pun or what, but anyway. Stacy, what part of the original Martyr would you say made you cringe the most? Because you were talking about that.
I think I'd have to agree with Tessa with the final, the final phase where she was skinned, and you saw basically her whole skeletal system. You saw inside of her, and right,
yeah.
And when I watched it the first time, I think I cried. I actually cried at that point. Like I was already on the verge of crying when he was beating her, like relentlessly beating her, or unmercifully beating her.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal too.
Right. But when they skinned her and you saw the inside of her, I like cried. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not right at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a different perspective for sure. Seeing somebody skinned and bounded up on their knees, where you can see their whole nervous system, and the only thing that's left for skin is their face. It's just kind of like, wow.
Like
and she's still alive.
Like, and then that haunting look in her eyes, like, I was just like, wow.
It's like, holy.
It was an emotional. Yeah, that was an emotional scene. It really was.
Yep. And speaking of emotional stuff, so kind of like I was saying to you with the opening scene, which kind of grabbed you at the beginning, and just literally from there on, like with the innocent people, Stacy, trying to have a normal breakfast, which at the time appeared to be a normal family, and then we get that doorbell or knock, doorbell, I believe.
Doorbell and innocent
Yeah.
and normal are in quotations.
Basically, yes. But then we get met with the first shotgun blast that really starts the story and the goriness. But I just remember that opening scene really caught my attention because of just how much work went into that shotgun blast. Because, like, not many movies will actually show a good close-up range shotgun blast without it look pathetic. But the way Martyrs, the original anyway, like portrayed a close encounter of a shotgun blast
They really did their research.
Stomach, wow, chest, whatever. Still, it's just mind-boggling. And then the way Lucy takes out the family one by one, it's just insane. So, since we're just talking about the original for a minute before we talk about the remake version, what is everybody's first impressions on the breakfast scene with Lucy wiping out everybody in the original? Tessa, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, like you said, it starts with Lucy ringing the doorbell and taking out the father with the first initial shotgun blast, which we went back and rewound that, and I paused that in a freeze frame so I could get a closer look at the shotgun wound itself on the father, which I do have to say is pretty impressive, and it looks like they did their research thoroughly for this kind of wound. And then after watching the father go flying backwards against the side of the staircase from the blast of the shotgun, she moves on to the panicked mother. Comes running out trying to see what the hell happened and whatever, and shotgun blast to the
back. She was trying to run backwards.
Yeah, okay. So yeah. So she gets shot in the back, we'll just say. And then the daughter gets her mother's blood splattered all over her face, panics, and runs to her bedroom. We see her disappear out of the scene. And then she moves on to the brother, or the son, that's in the kitchen. He's trying to get away, and she's like, oh, sit down, and blah, blah, blah. And he's the only one that she actually speaks to before she shoots him. He's the only one in the house that she speaks to before she shoots him. And she's like, how old are you? And did you know what they did? And blah, blah, blah. And he didn't answer her. So she ends up shooting him in the chest in the kitchen. And then moves on to look for the sister or the daughter. And goes into a bedroom, climbs up onto the bed, points the gun down at the bed, and is like trying to pinpoint the whimpering. And Maria's crying. And then she pulls the trigger once and misses, which spooks the daughter, and she comes running out from underneath the bed. Doesn't get halfway down the hallway before she gets shotgun blasted in the back.
Yeah. Pretty brutal.
Pretty brutal opening scene.
Stacy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that scene did catch me off guard. Because as you recall in the remake, which I watched, like I said, I watched it before. It didn't happen as suddenly and as early as that one. There was a little more backstory before that event that led to that event, and you got an understanding. But in the original, it just kind of happened, and you're like, wait, what's going on? Why did she just go in there and kill those people like that? And then that's when you get a little bit more of the backstory afterwards.
Correct. Yeah. That's how you can definitely tell the difference between the original and the remake, which we'll discuss a little bit more too. But yeah, you are correct, Stacy. And since we're on the topic of the remake, real quick, Stacy, is which scene is more which one is more brutal? Would you say between the French version or the U.S. version of that particular scene?
Definitely the French version was more brutal.
Correct. I would 100% agree with you. Because when I first watched the US remake of that particular scene, because, well, let's be fair and honest, when it comes to remakes and something that brutal of a scene, it's gonna get watered down by the U.S. And that's exactly what happened. Because Tessa pointed out something, and she noticed the difference right away, where let's take a quick trip through it. So, we got the father that opens the door, he gets blasted and he gets run back. But you don't really see too much. The mother, same thing. She gets shot. It's almost like she got shot with a fucking pistol. Let's just be honest. The shotgun wound of the U.S. remake.
Very severe.
Yeah, it wasn't as severe as a shotgun blast should be. And then the son was a little bit younger than the original. And then, same thing, not really much shown when he got blasted out of the chair. And then finally, with the little daughter, it only took one shotgun shell underneath the bed to wipe her out, not two. So, and we didn't even see that. We didn't even see the son get shot. We just saw like a little cut scene, like a little blackout scene. And that was it for the remake. But yeah, I mean, nothing great, nothing like, nothing too brutal as the original dinner table scene or lunch scene, whatever you want to call
Breakfast, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the girl was in her PJs, and the daughter was in her PJs, in both. The
parents
remake.
No, I'm sorry.
The daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the father was too. In the original.
In the original, but in the remake, he wasn't.
Yes, and what else was there a difference of, babe, between the original and the remake when it came to the parents?
They switched roles.
Yes. The father is actually cooking in the original. The mother is actually out in the backyard.
Working in the hole, doing maintenance.
The maintenance of the valve. And then look at the U.S. version and it's swapped. Because I guess women can't do what men do or something. I don't know. Whatever that was about. Anyway, moving onward. So, Stacy brought up an interesting point between the two. So we're going to have her go into it a little bit, because at the very beginning of the original Martyrs, there is a little bit of a backstory to the original, but there isn't that much of a backstory. I mean, but it doesn't it doesn't give us the backstory that the remake does. Which, Stacy, what can you tell us about with the remake, with the background story behind the girl?
So with the remake, I remember Anna and
Lucy.
For some reason, I want to say Anna and Elsa. Anna and Lucy. They're young and they're playing together. I believe, yes, right. First, Lucy, was it Lucy that introduced herself to Anna, or was it Anna that introduced herself to Lucy? Because one of them was playing on the little merry-go-round or something like that. Weren't they in the remake?
Right, that was Anna.
Yeah.
Anna brought out a cookie to Lucy and placed it on the merry-go-round where Lucy was. And she was trying to say, like, hey, I just got these fresh, don't tell anybody or something like that. Like,
I just snuck into the kitchen while so-and-so was doing something else, and they're still warm, and...
Yeah.
Yeah, and then at first Lucy was a little standoffish. She was a little bit of a loner, didn't really want to talk to anybody, but she finally opened up to Anna. They became really good friends. And you kind of see like snippets of them, you know, in their younger years and playing and whatnot, thick as thieves. And then you see, what is it? They're in the church or altar, and they're both praying and everything. And what does Lucy say to Anna? Is it Lucy that says to Anna, saying that promise you'll always be with me or something like that?
Correct.
Promise you'll never leave me.
Right. And then they make some kind of a pact where it's like, I want to go wherever you go, something like that, right?
Correct. Yeah, because they were on the spinning...
The merry-go-round.
Thing, looking up at the clouds, and they're like, and Lucy was like, I wish I could just take a ride on a cloud and just go anywhere. And Anna asks her, well, where would you go? And Lucy goes, anywhere where you are.
Right. And then you get a little bit more of the background in there, though. The priest, is it the priest that's asking Anna about Lucy's monsters, right? These monsters that she tells Anna that she sees, right?
I think it's either the police or...
No, it's the priest.
It's the priest.
This time it's the priest.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in the remake, it's almost like it was all based around nuns and priests, while the original was more of an orphanage with some nuns, but it was more doctors with police.
It's like the remake took a more religious spin to it than the original did.
Oh yeah.
You know, there were the priests and, you know, the nuns or whatever, and then the whole church and all that. It took a more religious spin to it. And in the original, you don't really get, too much of a background story. All you know is that, you know, Lucy and Anna, you know, best friends. When they grew up, they kind of grew apart a little bit. Lucy finds, you know, her tormentors, and she tells Anna, and you can tell that their friendship had been strained at that point, because what did she say to Anna when she discovers that Anna never really believed her? She said, you never believed me. I thought, what did she say? You love me again.
I thought if I showed you their faces, you'd love me again.
Right, you love me again. So you could tell that their relationship in the original was more strange than in the remake, because in the remake, you know, make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, in the remake, it kind of takes the spin. It's like they were both looking for them, but Anna didn't expect Lucy to just go in there and start killing them, right? it kind of like took that whole spin.
Right. And the original kind of did it the same way in a way where, like, in the original, Anna was like, see, I knew I should have went with you. All you were supposed to do was just observe and then call the police, because the police wanted to find these people too in the original, versus the priest wanting to do something with them. I don't know. It was weird. Like I said, like for some reason it was nuns and priests, as Stacy said, a religious look in the remake versus the original that had like doctors, some nuns, but it was mainly police. So, but yeah, Anna wanted Lucy to contact her after she observed them, so that way they could contact the police on these people once she was certain that these were the exact people that abused her back when she was little.
Right, but in the remake, remember when Anna tried to call the police 911, it actually alerted, the tormentors or whatever, the group of people.
Right.
So
whereas the original, it was awarded. The people were rewarded because Anna forgot to hang up the phone with her mother, and these people were trying to contact the house, but they couldn't get through because the phone was off the hook.
Right.
Yeah. And we already knew with the remake that they were in trouble because, well, let's face it, if you're going to get a phone call and the answering machine happens and it goes right to the beep and nobody's talking on the other line, and then you hear dial tone, that's not a good sign. That should be a cue to get the hell out. But they did. So, yeah, that's another weird little difference that is going on as well. And then from there, it's just, well, what I call the 10-minute beating scene between the original, and then you get this weird, like, oh god, I don't even know what to call the remake. It's just like its own weird, like, loony bin, like where you take, I don't know, like you just take different people and you just try different things on them. I mean, okay, so people can follow us too is, so I had to, since I haven't seen the original in a while, and I had to remake more in my head than the original. I almost got the original mixed up of who did what, and because I thought for sure it was Lucy being the martyr in the original, when really after what Lucy been through, she ended up offing herself, which made Anna become the new target, which she became the new creation toward making a martyr, while in the remake, Lucy didn't off herself. Instead, Lucy became her project, while Anna was starting to have her own experimentation on her, I guess, with electrical shock.
Yeah, electroshock therapy.
Yeah. So this whole scene now is very different than both films, because once again it's making it look like it's a religious thing, like Stacy was mentioning before, versus just something like an occult, like the original was showing. So just so people understand. So, let's see, who just went first last time? It was, Stacy. So, Tessa, how much of a freaking difference is there when it comes to, well, the original and the remake when it came to the, what I called the 10-minute scene, a 10-minute beating scene to whatever you want to call the remake of the 10-minute beating scene, whatever.
Well, first off, the original beating scene, 10-minute beating scene, was brutal. It was relentless. The guy just came in and just was wailing on Anna, like relentlessly just beating her.
What was some of the process for people that may not know? Do you remember, like, or Stacy or whoever?
Are you talking about what they did to try to condition Anna?
Yes.
Well, for the original, what they were trying to do to condition Anna to kind of mold her into a martyr, they would beat her.
Leave her in a dark room.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting to it. They'd leave her in the dark. They'd leave her in the dark room. They'd put her, like, she'd only be wearing like a tank top and a pair of underwear. When they sponge bathed her, I imagine they sponge bathed her with ice cold water and let her air dry, so it was kind of like hypothermic conditions. They probably fed her cold food, which looked like shit. And I'm not just saying it looked like shit. I mean, it literally looked like shit. Like green baby poop. I'm sure Stacy knows exactly what I'm talking about. Or like split pea exorcist bile looking shit.
What would happen if you did not eat it?
You'd get slapped.
Okay.
You'd get beat. And you pretty much had a pot to piss in. And your bed was pretty much
just a mattress.
Just a mattress, and you were pretty much made as uncomfortable as humanly possible. The way that they shaped their martyrs and molded them, they said it was cold and methodical how they did it, the process.
And that it took young women to withstand the
young
pain?
Women were the best candidates because they responded to it better than anyone else. They even tried this shit on children, but it didn't work as well on children as it does on young women. So that's what they chose to stick to.
Yeah.
Whereas
remake.
So to finish up for the original, this 10-minute beating scene of Anna was brutal. Like I said, it was relentless. He just wailed on her. Like, she would have, like, her eyes would be so sunken into her head because she'd have black and blue eyes so badly. Her nose would be black and blue. Like, her whole face got completely just wrecked.
Annihilated. Basically.
And it seemed like they always would mainly focus on the face. I did notice that a lot. I mean, yeah, there were times where he would, like, kick her and, like, punch her and stuff elsewhere, but the majority of the brutality was in the face in the original. Whereas the remake, you really didn't see the molding or the brutality or whatever. You more or less heard sound effects through the wall. Like a drill, Lucy screaming, some blood here and there. You would see, like, what Lucy would look like after she got beat up or whatever, I'm assuming. Like, because you never really saw her getting beat like you did in the original. And, like, her final phase in the remake was just her back getting skinned off like a freaking fruit roll-up or freaking pull and peel or some shit. Like, that's all I could think of when I would watch it. Whereas the original, she legitly got skinned alive and had her whole, like, nervous system exposed and everything. The only thing that was left on her for skin was, like Stacy and I were talking about earlier, was her face.
What about Anna? What did she go through in the remake? Since she wasn't... Anna. Since Lucy wasn't alive in the original. Because Anna took over Lucy's spot in the original. Can you remember Lucy sort of throw in the original, what basically caused her to
So are you asking me what Anna went through in the original?
Anna didn't really go through anything.
In the original...
You already covered that. But I mean, Anna and...
Oh, you're talking about in the remake.
Yeah.
Anna really... She was mainly exposed to electroshock.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that she was introduced to, was electroshock. And then, like, she had, like, other, like, minuscule things here and there. She was actually taken out of her cell at one point and brought up to, like, the cult leader, or whatever the fuck you want to call her, the religious leader, and brought up to her office so she could witness another girl who would possibly be a martyr, a candidate for a martyr, and witnessed her die. And then when she was like, when the religious leader was like, well, I was hoping that I would be able to send you off in peace and you'd be free, but I can't give you that because, you know, obviously the girl that they tortured and butchered just to try to get her to be a martyr wasn't a martyr after all. So they're like, oh, we're just gonna kill you and we're just gonna bury you, with the family. With
the rest of the family, yeah.
And that'll just be it. But Anna actually gets smart after she's thrown into the hole. She does wake up. She does try to get out of the hole. She gets kicked back into the hole. But you do, if you were paying attention earlier in the movie, there was a drain pipe in the hole that was being dug. So I was like, my first thing was like, okay, Anna, are you going to crawl into the drain pipe and, prevent yourself from being buried alive? What are you going to do? She actually is smart enough to get into the drain pipe and avoid being buried alive. So I was like, oh, good girl, you did that. So... Yeah. Anna ends up coming out of the drain pipe, eventually working her way out of the drain pipe while Lucy is going through her final stages of becoming a martyr. And she ends up starting to take out the cult, or whatever you want to call it, weakening the cult by taking out individual members.
Yeah.
Which... That's I think that's the most brutality we probably see the entire movie is when Anna goes fucking AWOL and takes a freaking shovel and, gets the guy in the neck and practically almost decapitates him. And then takes a knife or a garden shear or something and sticks another guy.
Yeah, the broken shovel thing.
Yeah. And then proceeds to, work her way to Lucy and gets her hands on the shotgun, takes out another guy, goes down to the basement, uses the gun again, takes out another. Another guy comes up from behind and tries to take Anna out, and one of the other girls that's imprisoned down there comes out of her cell with her chains and starts strangling the guy and dragging him off into her cell. And, Lucy just becomes this gung-ho Haroni, trying to save Lucy.
Basically the superhero of the film.
Yeah.
Which I call that scene the brawl out shootout.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much what I gathered from it.
Now, we'll test Stacy's memory for a minute. Alright, Stacy. So, between the remake and the original, did you happen to also notice a difference when it came to who was haunting Lucy versus like who Anna also found down in the basement?
So,
Do you know what I mean by that?
are you talking about that that spirit that kept terrorizing Lucy, and the reason she had to go back to the house to kill them in the first place?
Yep. And then,
Oh, right.
yep, that part, yep, that one. And if you remember who or what Anna found down in the basement when she was trying to clean up.
In the remake, I remember she found that ladder going down to the basement, where she found those different rooms. And then the one door that was open, there was a little girl that was chained up in there. And then in the original, there was also a woman in there, but she was older of age, and she had that metal thing over her head and around her waist. She was chained up with the metal plates on her.
Yeah, covering up her eyes.
Yeah, her eyes and everything. And honestly, the original was still more breathtaking at that point, because even though in the remake the girl was younger, that didn't really have an impact on how emotional it was. Maybe because it wasn't as drastic a measure as it was with the original. I mean, they had stapled or screwed that thing on her head, and Anna had to, take the screws out, the staples or whatever it was out. And then you saw her face up underneath, and it was like, oh. And the little girl appeared to, honestly, the little girl didn't appear to have much harm done to her, really. Just that she was chained up in the basement.
Well, do you remember why that older lady had that steel stuff covering her eyes?
Oh, no, I don't remember that part. Unless I might not have really paid attention to that part on why.
Here, I'll help you. I'll fill in the blanks for you, okay? The reason why that contraption was on her head and it was nailed into her cranial cavity is because they wanted to obstruct her vision, because she had this phobia where she thought that she had cockroaches crawling all over her, and she would scratch or try to wound herself trying to get rid of the cockroaches. So they figured if they took away her vision and chained her up,
that she wouldn't be able to dismember herself.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I remember that. I just didn't really I remember that part.
Which I will at least say this after watching the original and the remake. I will applaud to the remake a little bit that they did have a little girl, which, I mean, let's look at it like that. But I mean, I do at least say wish there was a little bit more to the little girl chained up in the remake to help the story. But because if we remember in the original, if I sound like I'm laughing, it's because one of our cats is trying to attack something, and it's always hilarious.
It's a vacuum attachment.
It's a vacuum cleaner attachment, and he's trying to attack it right now, which is really hilarious.
He's checking it out, what the hell is this? And he's cautiously approaching it and raising his paw up and just quickly.
But anyway, Yeah. So anyway, in the original, as Tessa was saying, I believe that the madam head lady, she was mentioning to Anna in the original that they tried children, but they preferred the young women. Anyway, I at least applaud that because they were trying to at least say, well, because they didn't really say too much of who they exactly worked on in the remake, but by portraying the little kid when Anna found her down there to begin with, it helped the audience say, oh wow, so it's not just adults, it's also children being worked on as well. So I at least will applaud that. But with the original, we kind of already knew that because Lucy could look at how young Lucy kind of was when she first escaped 15 years ago versus the remake saying it was, what, babe, 10 years?
Yeah.
So there was a difference there, even with the timeline of how many years apart it was from Lucy's escape, which is really odd enough, too. Okay. And finally, we got the weird ending between both of them. So, we finally get the Martyrs, right? We finally get the Martyr a little bit. So, in the original, we get the most craziest, bloodiest goriness of them all, where basically head to toe is all skinned except for the face of Anna in the original. We witness sort of what she sees, which is almost like a weird, cloudy, like white light thing that almost looks like she's just ready to go up into the heavens.
Ascend
Into the heavens, and then she comes out of it. Whereas the remake, we only just see not that much getting taken out of Lucy, because we gotta remember Anna's still alive. So, and once again, with this sort of being like Stacy was saying, a religious cult versus just an occult, they like put Lucy on a freaking cross to basically like show her like she's the
like she's like a messiah.
Like a messiah or something. And then we get Anna, who comes down with a gun, basically telling the priest and everybody to get her down. And then when that happens, this is where the remake and the original, once again, is very different. And I'll just finish it real quick, and then we can wrap this up. Because this is, like I said, this is where I just hate this film so much. So after the Messiah, they bring her down. So we're talking remake, so everybody's on the same page. So right now I'm on the remake. So Lucy's up on the cross trying to be like a Messiah. She's holding a gun. She's trying to tell everybody to get her ass down from it. And everybody trying to be like, no, no, no.
You're going to interrupt the process.
And all of her suffering will be for nothing. And everything else. And then finally she tells Anna what she has witnessed, which in this case, in the remake, if I remember right, we do not actually see what she sees. We just kind of just see an audible thing going on. But we sort of get the idea of what we see. But once again, it ignores the showed us what we are supposed to have seen like the original does. Anyway, so after that, it's like, well, what did he say? What did she say? And then the father just goes, I heard what she said. And then just basically off himself.
Blows his brains out.
And then, didn't Anna basically, like, shoot everybody, even the head honcho lady, and then...
In the head.
And then, basically, she goes up to Lucy on the thing, and that infamous line again that Stacy was talking about from the backstory is, well, where do you want to go? Or something like that. Wherever you go, I'll go, basically.
Yeah.
And that's basically the end of the damn movie.
So basically, to wrap up what Paul's trying to say about the remake, is Lucy and Anna died together because Anna had taken a scalpel in the side while she was being all gung-ho. And
being the superhero.
Yeah. And she was bleeding quite profusely throughout it, and by the time that she got to Lucy, and Lucy was starting to slip away, so was Anna. So they essentially died together.
Yeah. And then finally, we get the original, where she tells the message to the head honcho. They get the gathering of everybody that is part of this occult, I guess, occult.
So they're all getting ready to hear what the cult leader has to say about what Anna had told her. And while they're all downstairs gathering, the cult leader's upstairs in the bathroom. She's taking off her makeup, wiping all her makeup off, taking off her fake lashes, everything else, taking off her hair, wrap thing, and just completely just taking everything, like, beauty wise off. And meanwhile, her, I guess we're just gonna call him a butler or whatever you want to call him, is talking to her through the door saying, are you all right? Are you almost ready? Everyone's downstairs waiting to hear what you have to say about what Anna told you, and blah, 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 blah. And she goes over and she sits on the edge of the bathtub. And she takes her purse in her hands and she opens her purse up. She takes her gun out. And she says something to the effect of, have you ever wondered what comes after life?
Could you imagine what happened beyond death?
Beyond death. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no, I can't imagine. And she goes, keep doubting, and then blows her brains out. So between the remake and the original, the cult leader takes herself out of the equation in the original. Whereas in the remake, the priest takes himself out because he overhears what's said, whereas the cult leader herself heard it.
Yeah.
She got like a almost 2.5 hour long spiel of what happens.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. All right. So, Stacy, what are your thoughts? Because I know me and Tessa here just blabbered out both endings, but what is your opinion on both of the endings for these movies?
I feel the original was a little more it was probably a little more it was more intense, a little more believable. Like in the remake, for one, Anna, she was buried alive. But it made it seem so easy to get out of that, for one. And then, she gets shot, gets stabbed with that knife and everything, and she's still kicking along. I know at some point she finally gave in, but I felt like the original was a little more believable.
Well, what really kicked me off about the remake is like, look at how much suffering Lucy went through in the remake, and then look how little it took Anna. And I mean, I can't really say too much about it with the original, but then again, you gotta look at it as, well, the original, Lucy offed herself. So all we really had was Anna. We didn't have this whole superhero brawl, shootout, gun-ho, I'm gonna save your ass thing and die with you in the original. There was none of that. So...
And that was a kind of a confusion in the remake. Why did they... Hold on. So in the original, their main subject that they were so obsessed with was Lucy, right? But Anna is the one that ended up pretty much filling her shoes. And then in the remake, it was Lucy. I didn't really understand that.
It was because in the original, so in the original, Lucy was haunted by one of the former inmates that she found when she was little. So the lady that was haunting her since she was little was the reason of why Lucy offed herself in the original.
It's like right. She couldn't live with the guilt.
She couldn't live with the guilt anymore because Lucy managed to escape while the lady that was haunting her did not.
Yeah, she saw her.
But didn't do anything.
But she didn't free her.
No.
As soon as she heard a noise, she ran and she left her there.
Basically. So in a way, the lady that was haunting her in the original basically gave in to, well, I don't want to say gave in, but she caused enough pain to make Lucy just, she just had enough and just slit her own throat, basically. And that was the end of Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy was just pretty much like, no more.
Whereas in the remake, Stacy, there wasn't really much of a haunting going on. It was more like there was a haunting, but there really wasn't, if that makes sense. And then, she didn't off herself like she did in the original. So the cult was able to capture both of them.
Well, no, because Lucy tried to off herself in the remake, but she didn't really succeed because she fell off the balcony, right?
Yeah,
right.
She threw herself off of the balcony upstairs and tried to kill herself that way, but it didn't work.
No. Yeah. But, yeah, plus they also brought in the little girl, too, to kind of be like, oh, Lucy and Anna are going to get this little girl out, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, they all got caught, so, yeah. But, there wasn't any sharp objects around, I guess, so that Lucy could off herself with or whatever. But that's basically what happened. So because of that, the remake was able to use Lucy and Anna, which Anna became the goddamn superhero badass that could just, plow through everybody, which made the religious group look weak. In that sort of sense, while the original, the cult was more like this is one type of cult you do not want to mess with. Is how I looked at it.
Okay.
Anyway, if you guys had to recommend the original or remake of Martyrs, which one would you prefer?
The original is more brutal. It leaves a lasting impression on you. But you have to have like a strong stomach to watch.
Especially if you haven't seen a Serbian film.
Yeah,
Serbian film, yeah.
Especially the original, it definitely leaves an imprint. It's one of the unforgettable films. Once you watch it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. I can't unsee it.
That's for sure. Alright, well, that wraps up the Martyr remake, original versus remake episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we like sort of talking about it, except for the remake with me because, well, it's garbage. It's a piece of crap. And I'd rather talk about the original all day anyway. So Pascal knew what he was doing. He knows how to disturb people. And if you haven't seen any of the other stuff Pascal is known for, I would definitely highly recommend check out the rest, especially Incident in a Ghost Land. So, my name was Paul Dolsky. I was joined by
Tessa Baker.
Stacy Cox.
And like always, people, well, I guess in this case, lock your fucking door. Make sure your telephone is not tap wired. Make sure
You have a weapon in the house or several.
yeah. Maybe a shotgun. And make sure nobody is trying to haunt you for something that you regretted back in the day. So, till next time, stay scary.